Okay, I'm with Richard Agar. Richard, it looks like you've drawn the short straw again, because last time I came down, Tony ducked having an interview with me, but I'm sure it's nothing personal.
It must be something you've said, yeah, it must be avoiding you.
Anyway, looking at the team in general, you must be very pleased at the moment to flying high at the top of the league.
Yeah, for sure. You know, the season's always going to have little bumps in the road, and you know, we've had a couple of them, but I think the biggest one we had at Huddersfield, we utilised it very well. You know, I think you always learn something in defeat, and I thought the response from our players since that game has been magnificent. You know, like a lot of clubs in the competition, there's been a lot of injuries flying about, and you know, perhaps ours haven't been as well documented. Obviously, we lost Chris Sandow, which has been probably our most high profile and a long-term injury. But at the moment, you know, we have got probably 12 or 13 guys sat on the sideline, and a number of guys that you would expect to be in our starting team, or certainly in our 17 as well. So we've had our challenges with that. We think the boys have performed magnificently during that period. Some of our younger guys have really stepped up to the mark and taken the opportunity with both hands. And at the same time, we played Oldham at the weekend. Some of the young guys get valuable experience as well.
That little wobble Warrington had with, I think they lost 3 out of 4 games,
yes,
actually coincided with the loss of Chris Sandow through injury. Do you think it was down to getting used to playing without him? It took a bit of a while to get that sorted?
Yeah, on a couple of reasons. I mean, 2 of the games, were probably down to goal kicks. Yeah, I'm not saying it's the goal kicks that lost us the game. There were plenty of other instances in that game. So we were close and we were tight, even though we didn't perhaps perform at our best. We certainly could see reasons at Hull why things didn't quite work for us. Second game at Easter, we underperformed at Saints, but probably could have snuck the game in the end. But Huddersfield were a real flat spot, and I think Stefan Ratchford has not done a real pre-season with us. He had some pretty major surgery in the off-season. Since he's come back into the team, he played a bit of full-back, a little bit of centre, a bit of loose forward, a bit of hooker. So for him to get his combination with Kirk Gidley, to the level that Kirk and Chris were performing at, were probably a little bit unrealistic. But I think they're both high-class players, and give them a week or two, we've made some terrific adaptations to their different styles, and we've certainly hitting our straps offensively, that's for sure.
Where are we on the injury front with Chris Sandow? I think he's probably been out about 5 weeks now. Yeah,
it's hard to put a figure on it. There's probably a low figure and a high figure on when he come back. He's running in a straight line. He's feeling very confident. He's feeling strong. His sit and reach is getting better all the time. The power in his legs increasing with all the rehab and treatment that he's getting. And I think importantly, the scans are telling us that his injury is very much pointing in the right direction. Chris is determined to shave some weeks off the estimate that Ben Still has given him. I'm not sure Ben's as keen as Chris is to get him on the field back early, because with a hamstring injury, it's very important that it's given the right time to recuperate, because the last thing you want with a hamstring, because they are prone to going again if they're not quite right. So there's a lot of rugby left to be played, and hopefully we're going to need Chrissy for some big games at the end of the year.
Have you got anywhere particular in mind on the calendar for his comeback?
No, not yet. It literally is a week by week progression. I think the estimate were around 10 to 12 weeks, and I think he's about 5 weeks in now. So we've still got a major amount of time. As I say, he's determined to shave some time off, but I think we'd approach this one. We're optimistic, but we're also very cautious as well, because we want to do what is right for Chrissy in the long term. He's a very important player for us.
And there are a lot of other injuries which you've touched upon. Are we likely to see any of the other casualties coming back in the near future?
Well, from last week, Ben Evans and Toby King are back in contention this week, and the 3 guys that I think will come into the 19, Ben Westwood, Ryan Atkins, who missed a week with his finger, and Matty Russell will also come back in as well. So we are getting some troops back. Brad Dwyer's probably only a week or 2 away. Ryan Bailey won't be too far away from being considered for selection. And once those guys are back, then you're on and looking another sort of 2 or 3 weeks before you're starting to get Jack Hughes back in there too. So yeah, we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. And as I say, we've had a period where we have had some injuries, but we have still managed to keep what we feel is a very strong team out on the park.
You mentioned Ryan Bailey and all the names there.
Yep.
What can Warrington public expect from Ryan when he actually gets on the park?
It's fair to say, and Ryan won't mind me saying this, he's a guy that has certainly polarised opinion throughout the course of his career. We're getting a mature, experienced player who probably realises his last two moves and clubs haven't quite worked out for him. So he probably knows where he's at. He's worked very hard in his rehabilitation. I think many people within our camp and our squad will probably endorse what I'm saying now by saying, don't judge a book by its colour where Ryan's concerned. The villain, the opposition villain that everyone sees, he's certainly not that type of player within the squad and in the camp. He's very diligent. He gets about his work really well, and he's a guy that he's got a very, very quiet and humbling persona really, which is quite the opposite to how he he's perhaps been seen when he plays out on the field. But look, we've got a squad that's been tested by injury. We lost Mitchell Dodds for the year. Ben Evans has been a little bit late coming back from one or two niggles he's picked up this year as well. So front row is an area that we need some depth. Ben Westwood's played a fair bit of front row this year. Now we've lost Jack Hughes for 8 weeks. So getting some stocks to bolster our front row and keep that competition for places in that area, will be something that we can look forward to.
Do you think all the injuries that have happened this season, I think there are 13 at the moment, are down to any changes that have been made in the training since you brought Clarkey back, or? When Jurgen Klopp arrived at Liverpool, he went through a lot of injuries, and it was said because he was pushing them harder in training and stuff like that.
No, quite the opposite. I would say if you watched our performances this year, I don't think fitness has ever been an issue for us. I think at Huddersfield we had a very flat performance that were lacking in energy, and we got backed up a lot by a kicking game and errors and things like that. But I generally think that our strength and fitness this year has been right up there. I think you can compare any team in the competition and say, that's certainly not been an issue for us. Is the injuries part of anything we're doing in training? I think when you cast statements like that, they've got 14 injuries, so is it what they're doing in training? I think it's always wise to go and have a look at each individual injury and see how it's occurred, and all of a sudden if you've got 7 soft tissue injuries all in the same area, then you might think, but Jack Hughes has got a broken bone. I don't think any. So he did it in a game. I don't think any sort of training could, stop injuries like that happening. And I think if you go through our squad, there's not one particular type of injury that we are picking up. I do think some injuries come about because of fatigue, and I've got no doubt that the lack of pre-season we have and the lack of rest and the sort of 6 weeks that people have, and sometimes 4 weeks. You throw Easter in after 9 or 10 rounds, we've got 4 games in just over a 2-week period. I think you tend to find that the injury rate will increase. I'm sure someone will be doing facts and figures that'll either prove me right or wrong on that, but I think most clubs, I think that somebody said that 40 players over the Easter period, I think that's no coincidence, that injuries tend to be picked up at times like that.
There's been a lot of positive news coming out of the club over the last few weeks, with Kirk Gridley extending his stay here, Tony extending his stay here for another couple of years, the chief exec Roger committing himself to the future of the club. How are things for yourself? What's your future here?
You need to get Tony on Phil and ask him that. I think when you look at those guys, Tony being the head coach, it's quite natural that the way things fall in order, that the club and the board will get Tony fixed up first, and then I think all things follow in a natural course there. So I'm not too worried at this stage. I think I'm a firm believer that if you work hard, and obviously we're getting some good results at the moment, all those things take care of themselves, and fall into place in due course. But I think it's terrific for the club. You know, I think Tony, in his own words, said that he's been a good fit for the club and the club have been a good fit for him. I think it's terrific. You know, I like the fact of managers or coaches having long-term relationships with the club. I think stability is a good thing, and while, you know, the last 2 years for the club has probably fallen a little bit below their standards and what they've expected, I think it's only natural that, you know, when a team comes to the end of its shelf life and players start to break up and move on, you know, quite naturally you do have, you know, people term it a transition period. It's how long that lasts. You know, I think Warrington made some difficult choices at the end of last year and performed, you know, some major surgery on the squad, but I think it's been thoroughly vindicated with the performances this year. And I think if you look at the team now, the team is well equipped to, you know, to stay in situ and to challenge for not just this year, for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Looking at the age and looking at the talent within the squad, of course there'll be some wastage, some retirements, probably some unforeseen injuries in there. But I think, you know, the core of this squad is ready to take this club forward. You know, and on and off the field, you know, you mentioned Roger Draper. I think it's a good place to be at the moment. You know, the outlooking in at the club sees a very vibrant, proactive, and healthy situation.
Well, I've certainly seen that for myself, having worked with the Bulls for many years. It certainly is a club going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much.